Hey guys, welcome back to HotS Thoughts number 8, and today I'm going to be talking about the new hero, Cho'Gall. First of all, before I start, just want you guys to know that we released our first Nexus Knights episode. That's the Heroes of the Storm team. And we're talking about BlizzCon and the scaling changes and the direction of the game in terms of balance and design. So check that out. You can find that on our landing page at teamliquid.net/heroes. And we hope to be doing more of that in the future. So today I'm going to talk about Cho'Gall real quick. There's a lot to talk about, so I'm going to try to just go straight through the list as much as possible, going into depth where I think it's necessary. First of all, Cho'Gall is really fun. He's just really fun to play. If you haven't had a chance to play him yet, play him. He's really lots of fun. He's got a pretty cool implementation. The way that they designed the hero as a whole, with two heads, two players playing in one body, and spreading it via the Cho'Gall virus and all that. That's really cool. I like to see that from Blizzard, and I hope they do more of these sorts of things in the future, because I think it's done a lot to help the teamwork aspect of the game quite a bit. He's also surprisingly well designed. He is very strong without seeming overly strong. When I first saw the hero, I was afraid that he was going to be very polar, that he was going to be either way too good, or he was going to be just kind of average, but like just never he couldn't be powerful enough in order to stay balanced. But Blizzard's actually done quite a good job at keeping him fairly balanced, in the sense that he has pretty solid strengths and weaknesses, but you can't. He doesn't mow down other teams, and he doesn't get rolled over either. There are ways to counter him, and there are ways that he can push and be strong on his own. So I think that's really good. Also, another good thing is that both Cho and Gall both seem like they have very good separate roles. It was one of the worries that Cho was going to be kind of doing all of the work, and then Gall was just kind of be hanging out there as a glorified avatar hat. But I think that the Gall actually has quite a bit of say in what goes on between the speed boost and Will of Gall, and I'll get into that more later. So I just want to go over each side of the head, each one of the heads separately real quick, and just kind of give you an overview and what I think about them. So Cho is a bruiser tank. He's very big. He's got a ton of hit points, and he does a pretty decent amount of damage between all of his abilities. He got significant healing on his W, and his E, the rune bomb, does a lot of damage. He's surprisingly tanky, he's surprisingly mobile, in the sense that the Surging Fist, especially if he upgraded at level 1, he can move way fast. It's actually amazing. So if we go through his talents here, alright, just making sure. Alright, go through his talents real quick. This is Heroes Nexus. Level 1, I'm just going to tell you the kind of general things that I build for. Generally, stuff that upgrades the rune bomb is very good. So, level 1, I've already done the math on a lot of these. Blazing Bulwark's really not all that good, and Fuel for the Flame is bad. Surging Dash is excellent. I highly recommend that ability. At level 4, this is a calculator tier where you can just plug in the numbers to a calculator and figure out which one does more damage. Rune Gauntlet does. Always get Rune Gauntlet. Trust me, the other two suck. Level 7, I usually get Fire Eater. I think the other two really don't matter. Fire Eater is really the best option there, in my opinion. Hammer of Twilight or Upheaval, both are good. Upheaval sets up really nice wombos, and Hammer of Twilight gives you more of a bruisery feel and allows you to do some really cool engage-disengage stuff. Level 13 is a really cool talent tier. There's lots of stuff here. You have Ice Block, you have an upgrade on your Speed Dash from Gall, and you have Runic Feedback, which allows you to basically reset the cooldown of Rune Bomb every time you cast it. So you can cast it on a minion wave, and it will instantly reset after it's detonated, because it hits 7 objects plus the 1 second that it goes down, for a total of 8 seconds CDR. 16. This is kind of a strange talent tier. I'm never really sure what to do, but I'm thinking that Crippling Blow was probably the best. 20, the Favor of the Old Gods is pretty good. Will of Gaul is solid. I'm not a huge fan of Cthulhu's Gift, but some people will swear by it. We'll see how that works out. Then there is Gaul. And Gaul is your spellcaster head that brings some utility to the hero. There are two basic builds on Gaul so far that I've seen. One is where you upgrade his Shadow Flame Q quite a bit, or you upgrade the Dread Orb on W a lot. The Shadow Flame build, it probably does more damage, but it's very unrewarding if you aren't good at hitting the Shadow Flames. You have to make sure that you hit them every single time in order to get all the buffs that you get from that. The W build is a lot easier because they're just balls flying everywhere and they're doing lots of damage. So basically, you can build him. Shadow Flare is alright. Usually Spurred Onward is good because that allows you to continually keep Cho moving and get him out of danger. I have Kilrog is... It's a scouting drone, it's not that exciting. Level 4, there's not really a great choice. Double back is really good, especially if you're going the W build. Then the reason for that is that it bounces forward and then it bounces forward again and then back. And if you cast it in a close range, it'll actually hit the same target 3 times in a row. That's really strong, and especially when you add it to the level 16 talent, Twilight Nova, it'll bounce and then bounce in 3 directions, 2 to the side and 1 in front, and then they'll all bounce back to the middle again. And that's very good. And also when you combine that with the Rising Dread, that's even stronger because it means that the one that bounces back to the middle is always doing a lot more damage. It's very, very powerful to get that. Siphoning Runes is also not bad. That helps keep Cho alive, and it's pretty strong. Bombs Away is probably not useful. Double Trouble and Edge of Madness. I'm having trouble deciding between the two of these. This is all damage. Level 7 is a damage tier. I've tried the Rune Bomb talent here. It's pretty good. It's like gathering power in a sense, but it's really easy to get because you only need 4 takedowns in order to have maximum efficacy with this. It does some damage, but I'm not sure if it's actually better than Edge of Madness or Double Trouble. And I would have to really put these through the calculator to find out if one of those is better than the other. I haven't played a lot of Gaul, I'm going to be honest, so I don't know his talents quite as well. Metal Bolt Volley does an amazing amount of damage, but it's retarded and doesn't really hit things very well. So I'm not sure how much I like it. Twisting Nether is an amazing slow that does a lot of damage. It's not as good. It doesn't do overall as much damage as Shadow Bolt Volley. So most people end up getting that instead. I've talked through these two pretty well. Giant Scorcher is basically a version of Giant Killer for Shadow Flame, which is pretty cool. Psychotic Break is his special storm talent. Allows you to continue using abilities for 10 seconds, which is realistically only 3 Shadow Flames at max and 1 Dread Orb more. So it's not really that amazing. Usually the upgrades to the ultimates are better. That's pretty much it as far as the talents go. If we're talking more about some of the other things that make them unique, when they get put together, all these things kind of get fused together and they become one hero as a whole. And it's interesting to see how that works because they work more or less like a sieging bruiser. They can siege really, really well with all the ranged abilities, particularly the Dread Orb plus the Rune Bomb. You can long range siege a lot of towers and start taking them down really early in the game. There have been several games where I played Cho'Gall and I've just pushed straight into a tower or straight into a fort and got it within the first 5 or 6 minutes. It's amazing how much work you can do with the two of them pushing together. Surprisingly, to me, it seems a bit like Leoric when he was first released, because you can just kind of continue to shove and people have to be forced to react to you and to move up and deal with you. The only unfortunate thing is that it's two bodies. It's two people instead of one person. It's one body either way, but it's two people instead of one. So you have about as much power as Leoric did with only one person. So in some ways it's a little inferior, but it still allows you to split push really powerfully in the early parts of the game and force your opponents to react to you. Accidentally take the table. He is the other awkward thing about him is that since he is two people, it forces a little bit of a strange rotation for your team. Normally you see rotations, or normally you see splits as either a 1-3-1 or a 4-1 split. This is pretty common in Heroes of the Storm and just MOBAs in general. Those are the typical patterns, but when you have stuff like Cho'Gall in a lane, then it becomes very strange because you can't, like, the 4-1 pattern doesn't work as well because he doesn't rotate amazingly, and the 1-3-1 pattern doesn't work as well because the lanes that only have one person in it might get overwhelmed, and Cho'Gall doesn't push hard enough to make up for that lack of people in the other lanes. So it's strange. I'm not sure how to work it with it so far. The best that I've seen is trying to do. I usually put Cho'Gall on top or bot lane, or mid on some maps like Sky Temple, but usually top or bot lane because that allows him to push and force people away from middle, and then you can keep the core 2 or 3 people on the rest of your team between center and the other lane, and just allow them to keep a strong core in the center of the map and rotate where needed. Generally, I found that Cho'Gall is good on 2-lane maps because of the awkward rotations that you force your team to go through. It's a lot easier to do a 4-1 split or even a 3-2 split on a two-lane map compared to trying to get a 1-3-1 going or a 4-1 with lots of rotations back and forth. The 2-lane maps are good for him. I think smaller maps are also better for him. The maps like Dragonshire or Tomb of the Spider Queen. Like I said, he's not great at rotating, but it's a lot easier for him to rotate on the smaller maps. Ironically, this is kind of paradoxically counterpointed by the fact that he's really good at sieging certain objectives. Because between the Rune Bomb and the Dread Orb, and Shadow Flame as well. Shadow Flame, yeah. Between those 3 abilities, he can kind of keep someone off an objective for quite a while. For instance, one of the objectives like Cursed Hollow, or the upcoming map Towers of Doom, both of those have channeling objectives that you can interrupt constantly. And if you just have Cho'Gall up there, just sitting there, he can interrupt that for a solid like 2 minutes. It's incredible. So he's very good in that sense. It gets harder as the game goes on because he doesn't move around as much, and if he's out of position, your team is losing 2 people. Like it becomes a 3v5, and that's a really big deal. So it's kind of weird. He's really good on Infernal Shrines and Battlefield of Eternity because he can siege those objectives quite well. If your team doesn't have control of the shrine area or doesn't have control of the Immortal, you can kind of sit there and just kind of throw stuff. You don't have mana, so you can just keep throwing things at them and eventually whittle your opponents down to the point where you can go all in and start taking over that area. He doesn't do really well on maps that require bodies, I found, and that is, again, is kind of paradoxical to the idea that he does well on smaller maps like Dragonshire, for instance. He doesn't do very well when he has to stand on things, because a lot of his power comes from the fact that he can long-range siege and then kind of get in there and tank a little bit. So it's this weird kind of balance between, can I go in or do I need to stay back and deal more damage over this time? And so maps like Sky Temple and Dragonshire, I'm trying to think of any others. I think it's just those 2 are in particular, where you have to literally go stand on a point and not move, are very difficult for him because he can't just go all in and do that. He needs to wear down the other team before his team can actually get in there and do work. And I think that's also kind of a weird side effect of having two heroes in one body, is that Cho'Gall is strong, but because it's still only 4 bodies against 5, you still have the problem of being able to focus down particular people, and if the enemy team splits really well, it's hard to chase down all of the broken pieces with Cho'Gall because you only have 4 people. So it's difficult to just go straight into fights. You really need to wear down the enemy team before you can go in and win a team fight with Cho'Gall. Like I've been saying, the biggest weakness is the 2 heroes in one body. That's the thing that just keeps on coming up over and over and over. You find that against good teams, against teams of 5, it's very difficult to deal with the rotations and things of that nature because they can just kind of really abuse the immobility that Cho'Gall has. The problem is that, like, if Cho'Gall dies, your team is 3v5. It's really, really bad. You can't win a 3v5 no matter how good you are. Sometimes you can win a 4v5, but you can't win a 3v5. If Cho'Gall's out of position, you're fighting a 3v5. That's also bad. And you have to give up objectives and things of that nature. You also run into problems where you lose XP because you have 4 heroes covering 3 lanes on some maps, and that can be really difficult if, say for instance, one of them dies, or if Cho'Gall dies, because then your team has to find some kind of weird way to adapt and rotate correctly in order to maintain the experience. So that's kind of a big deal. Have a lot less flexibility when you're trying to deal with lanes that are pushing really hard. Like, say for instance, you get up against Sylvanas tri-lane that's pushing really, really hard against one hero, and you don't want to have to try to rotate Cho'Gall all the way from bot lane to top lane to deal with that. It's too difficult to get that going. So it's strange the way he works. We'll see how that comes out. He seems to pair pretty well with the Lost Vikings because they make up for that lack of bodies, and you can just kind of get in areas where you need to be. So that's a pretty strong. He's also very strong with strong laners and specialists that have a lot of wave clear. So for instance, there was the first professional game that I know of that was played between Tuark and Starla Lotus, and Caldor posted this video last night. Basically, their team was Cho'Gall, Uther, Kael'thas, and Sylvanas. And big things being Kael'thas and Sylvanas because they can just hold their own in their own lane, and Uther can kind of just rotate where necessary. That was a really nice setup. I hope that they also weren't against really strong pushers as well, because I think if they'd been up against something like a Zagara and I don't know, a tri-lane of like Sonya, Vala, let's say healer, like that might have been difficult. So it's interesting to see how people are picking compositions around him to make him work better, but it's far from refined for certain. The other thing I found is there are some definite counters to Cho'Gall right now. Some straight up hero counters. So there is, the big ones that I found are Sonya and Thrall and Butcher, which, granted, I think all 3 of those got huge buffs with the scaling changes, but especially they just do really well against Cho'Gall until you have some sort of disengage, like the Twilight Hammer. The Hammer of Twilight, rather. So he's definitely in a weird spot where if the other team goes for one of those 3 heroes, he's a lot weaker than he could be otherwise, because if he gets in a 1v1 lane versus them, or a 2v1 lane, because that's what he is, he actually loses, and that's kind of a big deal. So we'll have to see how that evolves. There's also some pretty hard counters to the fact that they're only one body as well. Gall is actually completely unstunnable. Even if Cho gets stunned, Gall can still continue casting spells. but there are certain things that completely shut them down, like Polymorph and Cocoon. I'm feeling there's a third one, but I can't quite place my finger on it. I don't know. Remind me. If you guys know, put it in the chat later. So the abilities that can shut him down and render him useless affect the entire body as a whole. Maw completely shuts them down, but that's kind of like a battlefield removal tool. Anyways, the point is, when you get both of the bodies or when you have certain abilities that can catch both of them out, it makes them a lot less powerful, and you're essentially down 2 heroes, especially something like Cocoon, which is just point and click, and they're just out of the game for 4 seconds, which is a pretty big deal. Your team is fighting a 3v5 for 4 seconds. if he gets a level 20 upgrade, he can channel that for 4 more seconds, but no one's ever going to do that ever. So I think Cho'Gall so far is in a really good spot. We're going to see a lot more of him being experimented with, but I talked to Bakery some on Dating Toss, and he said that there's a lot of difficulties with coordinating the team, so it's going to take a while before we see him in pro play, because it just takes a lot of time and effort put into the champion to learn, or the hero rather, to learn the hero and have the rest of your team learn how to work around that hero. So it's going to be a while before we see it in competitive, but I think it'll be really fun when we do. So that's pretty much it for Cho'Gall. We are releasing a Cho'Gall First Impressions article today, which will probably say pretty much exactly a lot of the same things that I'm saying. But if you get a chance to check that out, you can check that out at teamliquid.net/heroes. I'll link the landing page in the chat below. If you have any comments, concerns, ways that I can improve on this, please let me know down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.